Alright guys, so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a drawing inspired by the artist Edvard Munch and his very famous painting, The Scream. So we're going to do this drawing step by step. I'm going to show you how to create a drawing that is very reminiscent of The Scream, but we're going to change some things. So the most important thing that we need to begin this drawing with is the head of the screamer. So the head of the screamer, I kind of think of it as like a pear shape, but upside down. So I'm going to start with a big pear shape for the head of the screamer. And I'm going to put that kind of not exactly in the middle, but close to the middle, a little bit down. And I've drawn it very big because this artwork, The Scream by Edvard Munch, uses emphasis. Emphasis is when one thing pops out more than anything else in the painting, where your eyes look the most. When you first glance at a painting, where do your eyes go? And that's definitely to the face of the screamer. And then if you notice in the drawing, your eyes will wander around, and we'll talk about that as we go along. So here's the head of the screamer. Now, this is expressionism, and expressionism is not necessarily drawing in a realistic way, but drawing in a way that shows emotion. That's what expressionism is. And in The Scream, of course, our emotion is terror. So we want to think about maybe things that, what a person's face would be if they were very scared. So we got some bugged out eyes here. I just used two circles for that. And then, of course, the screaming mouth. There's just two little dots for the nose, and while this looks almost exactly like the screamer, we're going to come back to this later on, or you're going to come back to this later on, and you're going to add some things to it to make it more unique. Now the hands. The hands are just kind of like, they almost look like worms or something that's dripping off the side. We can't really see any fingers, we just see the side of a hand. There's no detail there. Expressionism isn't about capturing detail. So we just have these two shapes. And then, of course, this is the hand here, and then this is the wrist that goes down into the shirt of the screamer. So here's the open sleeve, and I just kind of make a circle around it. That's the sleeves. And then here's the side of the screamer's arm. And it's always good when you're drawing like this, and you're using another artist's artwork as inspiration, to have a reference to look at as you're going along, and that just kind of helps you to make sure that you're sort of following along. So now these are the sleeves. He's kind of got these droopy sleeves. It's almost like he's wearing a robe or something that you might wear to bed. Now here's the neckline. So here's his neck. This is the top of his shirt. These are his sleeves. And now here's his body. His body goes kind of like this. He's kind of like bent over, crouching, and he's just letting out this scream. He looks terrified. So here's our screamer. Now, for right now, he's done. We're going to come back and do some things to the face to make him look a little bit more different than what he looks like in the painting, to make this artwork a little bit more of our own. Now, the next thing, one of the most important features of this painting is the rails of the bridge. So the screamer is on some type of bridge. The bridge is actually going over something called a fjord. In parts of Europe, they call these big rivers that go in between mountains and valleys fjords. And so he's on a bridge. So this bridge actually is using something in art called linear perspective. And linear perspective uses lines that go back into the picture to make the picture seem as though it has depth. And this is a way that an artist achieves space in art. Space is one of the elements of art. Space is what makes an artwork look like you're looking into a window in some place, and you can see things that are close up and things that are far away. So linear perspective. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're just going to sketch some lines. And I'm going to start with this line. It goes behind the screamer. Now this is the top of the rail of the bridge, and sometimes it helps to get our lines right. And you notice I'm using these sketching lines. The reason why I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that I get the line right. So if I make a mistake, these lines are very light. I can keep sketching them until I get them just the way that I want them, and then they're light. They're right, and then I can make them darker. Now, one thing that you notice about linear perspective when an artist uses it is that these lines look like they're going back, and one of the ways that illusion is achieved is that the lines sort of spread out, they get wider. So up here, this next line, I'm going to make it ever so slightly. As it comes down, it's getting wider. And that's going to create the illusion that it's going back into space. It's getting further and further away. And again, keep using your sketching lines. You could have an eraser. Make sure you share the eraser with your neighbors. And there we are. Okay, now here's our next rail. And they're gonna, just like the other one, gonna spread out a little bit. Sketching lines so that if we make a mistake, just go back and fix it. And then there's a third one. Now this third one is actually the bottom rail that is touching the actual walkway of the bridge. So there's our bridge. Now, there are these up and down beams that hold the parts of the bridge together, so we can just put those in. Now, another thing about linear perspective, that just like these sort of spread out as they come down, these things, as they go further and further back into space, they're going to appear to be closer together. Likewise, as they come closer to us, they're going to seem to be spread out. That's because it's an illusion created by looking back into space. So maybe there's another one here. You see I've put the distance less, and also the size needs to be less, and I'm going to actually erase that and fix this. So this one's going to be slightly less wide. This one is than this one is. And then there's another one here. And then maybe there's one down here. All right, so that's a pretty good bridge so far. We're going to add some things to that when we add color. Now, the background is a landscape. All right, so we've got the foreground. That's the area of the drawing that's the closest to us. That's where the screamer is, and parts of the bridge, of course. The rail comes into the foreground. Then we've got the middle ground. Now, the middle ground is the area where things are neither close up nor far away. They're across the way from us. So they're in the middle. Now, the background, that's where things are the farthest away. That's where the mountains in the distance are going to be. That's where the sky is going to be. Maybe some boats far off on the fjord further away that are very, very tiny. That's the background. So foreground, close up, middle ground, in the middle, background, far away. That's another way that artists create the illusion of space. And you notice that Edvard Munch used two devices in this drawing to create space. He used linear perspective, the illusion of depth, of something going back into space and getting farther and farther away, and the foreground, middle ground, and background. So both of those two things are working together to really create this illusion of depth. So what I'm going to do to start it, I'm going to actually establish where the background is. So kind of just above here where the rail goes off the page, I'm going to put a line. And this line is the bottom of the mountain range that's far off in the distance. And above that, I'm just going to make some swirling lines. Again, remember, Expressionism, the style of art that Edvard Munch worked in, is not about creating detail. It's about simplifying and using color and line to show emotion. So swirling lines, and in the poem that Edvard Munch wrote that is the companion of this, which we'll talk about in class at some point, I think he talks something about being engulfed by nature, and it sort of seems like in this drawing, in this painting, that nature is sort of swirling around him, and it's making him feel not so well, as we can tell. So this over here is actually just sort of the edge of the land that's underneath the bridge. And then this next line that I'm going to draw is the edge of the actual body of water. So the body of water comes around and sort of swirls around, comes in, and then goes back around like this. And of course, if you need to turn your paper, that's fine. Now in the water, there's actually some boats, and they're very far away. They're in the background, and Edvard Munch has simplified them with just some shapes. He's just hinting at them. So you can just sketch out some boat shapes there. Also, and when we add color, I'm going to add some lines here just to show you, but he used a lot of swirling lines, and that is to create unity. This whole drawing has some swirling lines to create that swirling feeling. There almost seems to be a whirlpool right here if you look closely. There's some swirling shorelines, and I'm just kind of lightly sketching those right now. I'm not drawing them with very dark lines because we are going to come over this drawing with oil pastel to add color once we're done sketching it out, and we're going to add colored lines and make it look really sort of like close to Edvard Munch. So now we're actually quite close to being done with the drawing portion of this. So there's only a few more things left to draw. And one of the most important thing is that back here, over here, there are two gentlemen, it seems, shadowy figures. They don't have any detail. They really almost look like a shadow that you would see cast on the ground. So what I like to do to create the shadow effect is I like to scribble. So maybe this is the legs, maybe there's some arms here, and maybe there's a man. And since this is sort of back in the past where men used to wear hats a lot, maybe he's got a hat on. And then there's another gentleman sort of almost completely off the page. They're walking together. In the poem, it seems as though the screamer, the man who's screaming out, he's feeling the scream going through nature, as it says in the poem, that these are his friends and they walked on. So maybe these are two men. And you can see that just with creating sort of like a silhouette effect, we can create the illusion, a simplified illusion, that there's two men back here. Now, two more things we're going to do. We're going to turn our drawing to the side, and we're just going to add some lines. These are the wooden slats of the ground. We're going to fill these lines up with color. This is kind of just like a note to ourselves that we need to add some different lines of color here. And also swirling lines over here on the ground. We're going to add color to those too. It's just a note. You can make some lines a little bit darker if you want. You can really make this line thick if you'd like. Some of these lines, we need to make them thick. That's another way that expressionists like to exaggerate things, was to use very thick line around the head. Now, the last thing that I want you to do, and I'm not going to cover this in this video because everybody's drawing is going to be slightly different, but the last thing I'd like you to do is add something to this drawing to make it your own. You can do a couple of things here. You can make the face like a sort of like a self-portrait, or you can add something in the background here, perhaps something that you're scared of, or something that would make you feel uneasy. But I think the best thing to do is just to add sort of a self-portrait. If I were going to add make this into a self-portrait, I would perhaps add my beard and my glasses and things like that to make it look like me. So I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to let you add those details. So this is the drawing. The next video that we're going to look at will be how to add color with oil pastels.